welcome to this edition of the TraderTalk TV. Today we're joined at the whiteboard by Aly Nurmohamed, founder and CEO of Nodals. Hello, Aly.
Hello.
Welcome to the whiteboard.
Thank you for having me.
Not at all. To get started, tell us a little bit about what you're doing at Nodals, and then we'll dive into a bit more detail on the whiteboard.
All right, so we founded Nodals around a year ago. So what we do, very simply, is build custom models to predict outcomes for advertisers, but using publishers' first-party data.
Yep.
So my background, where this came from, is I spent the last 4 or 5 years at a publisher, DMP, working really closely with publishers, helping them use their data to create first-party signals. And 2 things that we learned. One was that publishers' data and publisher data signals are really powerful and they work really well for advertisers. The second thing is it is hard to access all of those for advertisers and make the most use of them. Yeah. And so that's ultimately what Nodals are solving.
Fantastic. So let's dig into a bit more detail there, because that is an enormous challenge that we're obsessing over really in the industry these days, is how can publishers make the most use of their data and their signals so that they're providing the best type of inventory to advertisers, and then how can advertisers use that inventory to meet their desired outcomes. So fire away, give us a little bit of a perspective on how the platform works and where it all starts.
So where it all starts, so if you kind of think about what are signals and what are we all doing as an industry, you kind of take it here that you start with a consumer.
Yep.
And they go to a publisher, and that can be a website, an app, a streaming service, whatever it might be. And then you generate a load of signals, right? And then with those signals, you add some intelligence. And then with all of that, you can figure out the right ad to show to a consumer for the right advertiser at the right time and all those interesting things.
Yep.
Right? And so now you really have 2 bits in the middle here, which are signals and intelligence.
Yep.
And I kind of use the analogy here where it's like you're trying to lose weight or get fit. You can do all the training and do all the exercise you want, but if you're eating the wrong foods, it won't work. But the other way around, you can eat all the best foods possible, but if you're not doing the training, it's not going to work. So these are 2 independent things that you need to put together.
Yep.
So when you first start thinking about signals, there are 3 types of signals historically that we've used in programmatic advertising. Right? The first are based on user IDs. Right?
Yep.
So ultimately you have a cookie or alternative ID, right?
Of which there are lots in the market these days. Yep.
ID5, UID, whatever it might be. But really what's happening here is you find a match of that cookie and a third party will have signals behind that. Sorry about my handwriting here.
It's pretty good though. I mean, not quite doctor handwriting, it's more legible than that.
So that can be any signal that comes from this match. It could be retargeting, data vendor, whatever else it might be. The publisher's job here is to find that match, right?
Yep.
And that's ultimately what a lot of programmatic has been built on.
Yep.
Right? The second type of signal is contextual, right? So what is happening on that page? Contextual. What is happening on that page at that time? So that could be the page content. It could be basic things. It could be the time of day.
Yep.
It could be the ad format.
Yep.
Whatever it is. These are basically open, right? Everyone really has some sort of access to it.
Okay.
And so if you think about traditionally how programmatic has worked, it's been mixing these 2 together, right? These being the signals, and then you add intelligence and you figure out the right ad to show. The third type of signal is publisher first-party data. Now, what I mean by this is the strongest type of signal because a publisher has the closest relationship with the consumer, right? So
sometimes referred to as zero-party data, right? Yeah, okay.
Exactly. And so they can collect lots of things from their consumers. So it could be declared data. So the user says their age, gender, whatever else it might be, right? It could be the behavioural data that they can pick up from their consumers. So, that can be, intent or interest.
Yep.
So if you think about that as, someone's reading travel reviews every day this week, there's some intent that they're going to book a holiday, right? And now if you think about that with the walled gardens, when you're on TikTok or Instagram, whatever, that's something that's become really powerful, right? The content that you're consuming on those, you can see that then you see ads that are relevant. So this data is super valuable. The third really important thing is the media metrics that you can see. So the publisher can know what advertisers do on their site, when they interact with ads, etc.
Yep.
So all of this data is super valuable. And the reason it's valuable is two things. One is it's unique to that publisher, right? So every consumer has a different relationship with every publisher, and they collect different types of data that only they can collect. The second thing that's really valuable here is it's not reliant on a user ID.
Yep.
Right? So you're not constrained by, is there a cookie on this consumer? Is there an alternative ID? It's everything that happens they can collect, and so there's no constraints, so you can see things on every consumer that's there.
Because it's all consented.
It's consented,
Yep, right.
and they built that. So why that makes this data really good for signals, these two things also make it a challenge for adding intelligence.
Okay.
Right? The way that traditionally all the infrastructure to add intelligence to signals has been really based on user IDs and contextual signals.
Yep.
So now you've suddenly got this really powerful signal, so that analogy that, the food you're eating is really good, and that works. So any advertiser that tests just targeting these signals can see that the performance is really good. For obvious reasons, right? The publisher knows who that user is, that they can add value. But when an advertiser wants to add their own intelligence onto that, it becomes really hard. How do you get these signals out? How do you make use of them? How do you map them to an advertiser when you haven't got a user ID?
Yep.
Right? And
those complexities are wrapped up a little bit in things like data privacy, how the publisher controls their data.
Exactly, and it's two things. There's the privacy stuff that the consumer may not want to share that data with other people other than that publisher.
Yep.
And a publisher may not want to share that data in the open because it's their IP, it's what they've built. So the core part here is control, right? The publisher needs to keep control of that data to make it valuable. So when you've got third parties trying to add intelligence, it becomes a challenge, right? And so that's ultimately, you've got the best type of signal. The question that we were trying to answer is how can you start adding more intelligence to that signal? So if you're starting from scratch, intelligence would be built on the best signals, not intelligence would be built on the easiest signals to access. And so that's a difficult problem that we're solving.
Moving on to the second phase then, or the next phase,
That's how we're doing this.
So
there's basically three things that we've had to build to be able to solve this problem, right? And it kind of goes access, the algos or the models, and the activation. Right? So if you think about the access, if you have a publisher, publisher one, they have a load of data signals, right? Like hundreds, or maybe even thousands, right? And so first data signal could be, this is a female, 35 to 44. It could be that this person is interested in fashion. It could be the time of day is 11 a.m. Right? These are all data signals that the publisher is collecting. And the key part here is these are private data signals, right? So a third party like us can see this data, can use it, but the publisher has to keep control of it. The data can't leak. So we've built the infrastructure to be able to ingest all of these signals and understand what they are.
Without compromising any of the data ownership by the publisher or any of the data privacy requirements.
So it doesn't come out of the publisher, it remains in the publisher, they still control it, and we just look at it all and build our models. And so what we're doing here is building a model for each publisher.
Okay.
And so the next thing is you've got all of these data signals.
Yep.
And so let's say page loads, and you've got data signal 1, 2, and 3 are present.
Yep.
And the advertiser is an automotive advertiser. So what they care about is booking test drives, right? And so what we're now doing is building a model based on all the learning and all the training that you've got on that publisher's data to say, for an auto advertiser, for this specific outcome that they're trying to drive, what is the likelihood that you're going to be able to drive that outcome? And so that translates into a propensity score or a score.
Okay.
So
Yep.
75 out of 100. And now with those same data signals, if you have another advertiser who's a travel advertiser, the data signals are the same, but what they mean for that advertiser's outcomes
Is something completely different.
right? So the likelihood that they're going to drive an outcome is 12 out of 100.
Yeah.
Right? So the data signals stay the same, but what each of those mean to an auto advertiser or to a travel advertiser are completely different. So we're customizing the model for that particular advertiser.
Okay.
So the publisher has their model and you customize it for every advertiser that you're working with.
Right.
Right? And so that depends on the outcome,
Yep.
but it will be running that model, the same data set, but understanding how important each feature is for every advertiser.
Yep.
Right? And then you come on to the activation. So you've now still got this challenge that that data can't be shared with the advertiser. It only is owned by the publisher.
Yep.
But that score isn't anything sensitive, right? So the fact that this combination of data signals is there is kind of irrelevant to the advertiser. What is important to the advertiser is when these data signals are present, the likelihood that you're going to drive an outcome is 75 out of 100. So when you come to activate it, you're translating the private data signals into a score. So for publisher 1, what you really want to know for the advertiser is how many impressions have
Should I serve to an auto? Yeah.
of above 70,
Yeah,
and then
okay.
you should serve them. And publisher 1 might have 1 million impressions. Publisher 2, with a different data set and a different model, but the same kind of outcomes that they're looking for, and the same scores, they have scores of 70 and above, and they may have 10 million impressions. So really, all you want to send to the advertiser, and all the advertiser needs to know, is this is an impression that's going to drive my outcome.
Yep.
There's nothing private there. It's just the output of the model.
Yep.
So the input is private. The output is what the advertiser needs and also what the publisher wants to provide them because they want to kind of drive their performance up.
So effectively, this is what you're doing is creating a sort of a pool of data signals that translate into a customized score relevant to each individual advertiser. And then for the activation layer, the information that's relevant to the advertiser is the score. So they can then, presumably, base their advertising and marketing activation spend, etc., and their media buying on these individual scores.
And how you do that is one of two ways. Either you want to do that as a managed service and the publisher just does that for you, and publishers have an ad server, so you have GAM,
Yep.
and the publisher just says, for this advertiser, only serve impressions that have a score of 70 and above. Or you may want to activate it in your DSP. And in that case, because you want your DSP to layer on other intelligence or other things that your DSP might do, in that case, you create deal ID within the SSP, which is saying the same thing. The sell-side decisioning or the sell-side intelligence said, this deal ID is worth scores of 70 and above. And then you can, as an advertiser, activate against that and add your own, whether it's pacing or adding third-party data in or whatever else it is. But you now have that signal from the publisher that you know this is a good impression according to the publisher's intelligence. And then anything else you add on top of that is going to make it even better.
Yep. Yep. Super interesting. What about then all of this happening, this decisioning sort of happening at scale? How is that achieved?
So this is a bit that wasn't possible a few years ago.
Yeah.
Because what you're doing here is ingesting lots of data, processing it really quickly. It has to all be done within 10 to 100 milliseconds, and then passing something back out. And so that wasn't possible because you would have had to make a compromise between how much data you're ingesting, how complex is the model that you're running, and how quickly does it do that. So that compromise has actually gone away because of all of the innovation that's happened with cloud computing. So now the ability to process far more data,
Volume.
do smart things with it a lot quicker, and do it cheaper,
Yep.
has all kind of increased by orders of magnitude over the last couple of years. So whereas before it had been crazy to build a different model for every
single
publisher, and it would be crazy to customize that model for every single advertiser, now that's there. It's still a hard problem to solve, but the infrastructure has been created now that, whether it's GCP or AWS or Azure, that you can do things that you could never do before, including the automation. It would also require people to kind of do all of this, and now these cloud services automate a lot of it for you as well. So you can focus on what is a really valuable part of the data that you want to collect, and what is a really customization that is going to be valuable to advertisers, and do that all almost in real time.
Yeah. Incredible. So for publishers, obviously this is enormously beneficial because it gives them an opportunity to monetize, if you like, every aspect of their data. They're then able to use this huge volume of data that they've got to create, certain signals that will be of use to advertisers. And then for advertisers, obviously, it means far less wastage in terms of money spent and time spent trying to advertise towards audiences that might not be relevant. Does it bring a relationship between the buy and the sell side closer in that transaction?
Exactly that. Is if you're kind of you're giving the publishers the tools to give advertisers performance.
Yep.
Right? And this middle bit can now be owned by the publisher.
Yep.
And that has two benefits. One is they've got the signal, so they should own it. And they can use their own signals to drive performance and perform better for an advertiser.
Yep. But
also the cost, that they don't have to give away to third-party companies all of this value in the middle because of the signals that they don't own and the intelligence that they can't build. They've already invested in creating their own signals, and we're giving them the tools to be able to understand and translate that, or be a translation layer to turn those signals. But then that's all kind of in the publisher's control. So
yep.
The better the value a publisher will give to an advertiser, the higher the CPMs and the yield that they can charge. So publishers can kind of maximize the value that they're getting. Advertisers can maximize the working media, right? That they want to spend as much as they can with publishers to buy more media.
Yep.
And this gives them the tools to be able to do that.
And then presumably, where an advertiser is getting some great results, which you would expect, as a result of all of this, they will then know that they can go to a particular publisher with particular budgets and particular outcomes, and more or less hit those outcomes every time, presumably.
Exactly.
Yep.
Exactly that. It's allowing the advertisers, like one of the kind of challenges for advertisers is there are, when you kind of work in programmatic and you've got hundreds of thousands of publishers that you need to work with to get to that scale, has always been daunting.
Yeah.
But when you actually kind of peel back the layers, there are a limited number of publishers that advertisers want to work with. It may be 10 or 50 or even 100, but it's not hundreds of thousands. So they can focus on the publishers that make sense for them to work with, and the publishers can deliver the scale and the value and the performance that they need.
Yeah.
So really it's kind of shrinking down the publishers that you then are working with, publishers that which by kind of design gets rid of the dark side of programmatic,
Made for advertising sites,
etc., fraud and everything else.
Yep.
If you're working with a premium publisher, you know that it makes sense.
Yep.
Whereas if you're working with a scale of 100,000 publishers who you've never worked with, and it might be hitting performance, but you don't really know why.
Yes.
This kind of solves that you work with the publishers that makes sense.
And gives you some real results, right? You're understanding where that budget's going and why it's working the way that it is, presumably because it's associated with this school.
Exactly.
So then one final question before we wrap up, Ali. What about the type of publisher profile that this tool is most powerful for? Is it working for all publishers? What is it doing for smaller publishers, for example, that maybe don't have the same breadth of data?
I think the value that I see in publishers, the chain, is not necessarily the scale, but it's the depth.
Right.
So the closer that relationship is,
Yeah.
the more valuable the publisher is.
Yeah.
So if you're a publisher that has passerby traffic that people kind of end up on your site once and then you never see them again, you're not adding that much value, but that means that the data signals you're creating are probably not that valuable. Whereas if you have a deep relationship with your consumers, you're going to create better signals. And the better signals that you create, the more intelligence that you can add. Kind of going back to that analogy, right? The signals are really the fuel,
diet.
right? And so publishers that are focused on building relationships with consumers are the ones that are going to win.
Yeah.
Publishers that are focused on kind of arbitraging and trying to get users in once to show them an ad, I think will then
fall away.
kind of fall away in terms of the data just won't be strong enough for any type of algo to deliver any value.
Super interesting solution to be bringing to market now as well, because for so many years, at least the last 5 or 6 years, we've been talking a lot about how important it is for publishers to build that really sophisticated data infrastructure. So for those publishers that have built sophisticated data infrastructure, this is presumably potentially a dream for them.
Yeah, I think it's on both sides, right? I know firsthand publishers have been investing in their data for the last 5 years. Like every publisher has done that already. But I also know that advertisers have had a real challenge of navigating through this complex ecosystem of separating the fraud and the bad from the quality. And so this is what we're aiming to kind of make easier, that advertisers should only work with good publishers. Publishers should be able to get the value that they've created by investing in building relationships with consumers. Amazing. I have so many more questions, but luckily we are going to be on a panel discussion session next week at ATS London. So we'll get an opportunity to talk about this in more detail. But Ali, thank you very much for coming to the whiteboard today and sketching out Nodals for us. It's been fantastic to have you. Thank you. Thank you.
And thanks everybody for watching this TraderTalk TV session.